Welcome, everybody. This is Lee Strauss for Element 115. Jackie is not here tonight, but we have a special guest, Eve Howard, and I'm so happy she's here tonight. She's going to be talking about her experiences with aliens and the contact that she's had since she was a little kid. And we'll be going into that. And I'm going to start welcoming everybody in. Okay. So we got Kitty Cat Whack. Of course, that's my favorite name, I think. Welcome. We got Road Flare. We got Race Fan, of course, in the gold medal position. We got Matt Carter. We've got Andrew. We've got Cosmic Joe. We got Brown Dwarf. We got, let's see. We've got, going down here. We got the Grand Master in the house tonight. We got Dragonfly. We got Amy, WC. We got Kurt. And Jay Truthseeker, welcome, welcome, welcome. So I'm going to roll the intro, okay, and then we'll get right into our guest. We'll talk about her amazing stories. All right, just 1 second here. Welcome, everybody. Here she is, Eve Howard. Welcome. We're so glad that you've come.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I was so excited to hear that you messaged me on Monday.
Yeah. Well, we're starting to bring in more guests. Usually it's just Jax and I talking about our experiences, mine being mostly from the alien side and hers mostly being from the Bigfoot side of things. But we decided to start bringing in some guests to add a little flavor to our show. And you're one of the first. So welcome.
Awesome. Thank you. I feel so honored. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've been a lifelong experiencer.
Yes. I would say since the age of 3 was my first contact. And that was I was living on a reservation in northern Minnesota, and I was at my uncle's house, and I was about, my sister was about 6. No, she was 9, and I was 3. And I had wandered away. The pig had just had piglets. So I'd wandered away, and I had for some reason, just walked back to the lake by myself. And I was never allowed to go back there by myself. So I have no idea what I was thinking. And I walked probably about 50 feet. And there was an entryway to the beach on there. And I remember everything. Like, I remember standing there. I remember looking at the sand where the grass ended. There was little shells and empty reeds all over. And I heard my sister, she called me. And I remember looking to my left and not seeing her appear in the trees, like where my uncle's house was, our uncle's house. And she called me again. And this time, she ran up, and I don't remember anything after that.
Wow.
And she had gone to our mom and said there was a strange man, and he was like smiling at her. And so my mother said, well, draw a picture. And so she drew a picture. And I hate to fast forward. I'm going to fast forward, but it all ties in.
Yeah.
My daughter was about 13, and this was in 2005. And we were staying in an RV. We were transitioning into a new house. It wasn't ready yet. So we were living in an RV park, and I was working. My two sons were old enough to be there by themselves. And I was going to take my two younger daughters to grandma's house for the night. And I asked my daughter, will you please go out to the car and grab my purse, because like I have some makeup in there and I don't want it getting hot. I have to get ready for work. So I give her the keys. She goes out there, and a few minutes later, she's back, and she's got this look on her face, and she just drops everything and walks away. And I'm like, that was odd. Thank you. And we're in the car going to my mother's house, and she finally decides to tell me. When I walked out of the RV, I just felt like there was just something. I turned this way to my right, and there was a man standing in the field behind the RV, and there was just like a little barbed wire fence. So it wasn't anything. And I was like, and why, what did he look like? And she was like, he looked like he was naked, but he didn't have any private parts. And I was like, I'm freaking out, because I'm thinking that, it was just somebody that was partying and woke up and was wandering around without any clothes. And then she started describing it. And I was like, wait, don't tell me anymore. I said, when we get to grandma's house, I want you to draw it for her. And so if you think back to when I was little, my mother had my sister do the same thing. And she took those pictures, and they were exactly the same. And she said he had a very long face and didn't have any hair on his head. And, this is coming from, 13-year-old.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she said, I didn't really notice ears or a nose, just like maybe where there should have been one. It was kind of flat. And then she said the eyes he had kind of big eyes, like bigger than my eyes, and, bigger than your eyes, Mom. And so I guess what was really weird was, after these pictures, they just disappeared from my mother's house.
Yeah.
But they were and I think it was like 2 years ago, I finally went to my sister and I said, I've heard this story from Mom my whole life. And I was like, but I've never heard your side of it. And then she goes into, she had to go look for me, and everything adds up to what I was talking to, except for, she said, when she turned, and there's that little 50-foot area there before the beach, she said, I was looking at somebody. There was somebody standing there. She couldn't see him quite clearly. So she went running up, and she goes to grab my arm, and she looks, and she said, I'm smiling up at this man, and he's what I guess would be considered smiling back. But, she said his mouth was just like no lips or anything. He just had
like a slit. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was interesting to be told that, I was how close to, just going off with somebody I didn't know.
Yeah.
And then he ran away. And the weird thing was that she said, like, his feet didn't touch the sand. And that
Yeah.
was it.
Yeah.
He just ran away. But they were like speaking like telepathically to my sister and to my daughter, the way they were when they weren't communicating like you and I are right now.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
Okay, so before we get into any more of this story, I kind of want to have you introduce yourself and who you are, and talk, maybe a little brief mention about your show as well, so that everybody else can follow you on Facebook and Rumble as well.
Okay. I started this podcast, and it was a little over a year. We just had our first anniversary, and we had our 50 episode, and we had Anthony Zender for our guest, and he's like MMA, and he's also, a lot like, me with having, you know, um, experiences.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think I started out with a couple of co-hosts, but it just kind of got where, to me it was a passion, and not everybody, has that same passion. So, now it's just me. We've been on Rumble for the whole year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's uncensored. We are, very tell anybody, say whatever. We're not going to censor you. I do have a Facebook profile for the podcast. So it's Prime Declassified on
Mm-hmm.
Facebook. You can also find me on Facebook. My name is Eve Howard, exactly how it's spelled there. And I do have a YouTube, but we don't really do too much because it'll get taken down.
Yeah, yeah, I understand that. Yeah, it's definitely something that we deal with from time to time, just with the shadow banning and stuff that might be
Yeah.
happening.
Yes. So
Yeah.
I'm enrolled. I guess I would be like 7 ACE enrolled in White Earth. It's a band of Ojibwe in Minnesota. I don't currently live there, but I'm very close by. I also am a Usui Reiki Master, so Reiki Master. So I do have like a healing page as well. It's Rising Spirit. That's also on Facebook.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's about it for me. I don't think I'm very interesting, but I guess there might be some people that do.
Yeah, well, the fact that you've been through the phenomena, and have carried that with you since childhood, and you mentioned something there that caught my ear. You said that your daughter picked up that they were telepathically communicating to
Mhm.
her. Did you also receive that communication or that type of communication when you had that experience?
The really weird thing about, even though I remember going and seeing the pigs and then walking away and
Mhm.
going to the beach and standing there and I'm looking out, but it's almost like it's been digitally removed from my memory. I
Hmm.
don't remember seeing him. That's why I went to my sister and was,
Mhm.
I've heard this story. I was only 3, but I do have memories of, being in my crib as a child,
Mhm.
as a baby. Um, there's a few dark spots going to daycare. My mother pointed out when she was going to college, and it was in Wisconsin. And I don't remember that place. But, I mean, it's, childhood is, there's some holes there. So.
Yeah, yeah, I get that, especially around age 3, I would imagine there.
Right.
I even have some holes from back then too. It's not. It seems like it's a chopped up mess, really. Um, but yeah. So later in life, you kept on having more experiences. Is that the case? And
It did. It was probably around 2001. I was going with my cousin. We worked like they work graveyards and we had to, days off. We just kind of stayed up, like, just kept to the same schedule. And we were going down to Minneapolis and it was dark out. we were taking these back roads, and we come out, there's like a really big clearing with trees, but there's like a clearing, and then I happen to just catch something, and I look over, and it's this huge blue orb that was probably about 5 feet into, diameter. So it was pretty wide. And it's almost like the same, those magic balls over at Spencer where you put your hands on and the lightning comes out. It was like that, except for it was like blue. And I just kind of looked at it, and I'm like, I didn't say nothing because I was like, I'm not going to say anything unless she says something. I was like, I'm not going to be that weird one. We're like, what was that? And about half a mile down the road, she's like, did you see that? And I was like, see what? I was bound to determine just to play dumb. And she said, that big blue thing. And I was like, yeah, I saw it. And she, we talked about it, and we were kind of scared, but I was like, just don't stop.
Just keep,
stop. Just keep going.
Yep. Keep your foot on the gas pedal.
Exactly. And I would say about a couple of weeks after seeing it, I started to have some really strange things happen. I would be home, and my boyfriend at the time worked graveyards, and sometimes I would stay up, sometimes I would sleep. Well, this time I decided to fall asleep. And I'm laying there, and he's like, bye, I got to go to work. And he was gone, and I'm just kind of dozing off. And I feel somebody like rubbing my temples, like just softly. And I thought he came home, I was like, maybe they're waxing the floors. He didn't have to work. But then I realized those fingers, instead of feeling good after a while, they started to like pull me off the bed. Ooh. And I couldn't move. I couldn't move my arms. I couldn't move my body. I couldn't even open my eyes or make noise. And it scared me. To the point where like the next night I brought all the animals in the room with me. We had like 3 dogs and made them all sleep in the room. And it happened again. I'm laying there, and I used to be able to sleep on my stomach, and I'm sleeping on my stomach, and I got the pillow there, and it was almost like someone came up and just started to push my face into the pillow. Ooh. And it scared me because I could not move again. I'm like I've never had sleep, paralysis at this point. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's like, like a ghost or spirit in the house, and I'm being attacked. And so I left that bedroom. We had another bedroom. The third night I go in there and I go to sleep, and all of a sudden I wake up and I'm on the ceiling.
Wow.
And I can feel like the little pokey, when they spray up the ceiling.
The popcorn ceiling, yeah.
Yes, I can feel that on my hands, and I'm trying to push away from it. And by this time, I'm terrified. I'm going to be sleeping in my car soon. And so like the fourth night, I laid on the couch, and I kind of like cuddled in, and I had my back to the rest of the living room, and I'm facing the couch, and I'm having this dream, and there's like this weird black smoke around me. And I'm in the house, and I go round because we had like an L-shaped kitchen, and then the living room was in the longer L shape. And I come around the corner, and I see my body on the couch. And at the minute I see my body, it was like someone just yanked me across the room, and I remember hitting my own body and waking up. And I'm like, okay, I'm done. This house, something's wrong. I jumped in the car, and I drove all the way to my boyfriend's work. And I was like, I'm just going to sleep out here. Okay. And he didn't know what to think, because I was not telling him this. I mean, what do you say? He's a total non-believer. Yeah. He was always saying, oh, there's no such thing as ghosts, spirits, aliens, and everybody's just crazy. And I wasn't going to say, this is something's happening to me, because I know what he would say.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, just from what you're telling me, we have a lot of similarities in your story and what happened to me. So it's amazing to hear. That's why you see me doing this. Like, oh my God, somebody else that's been pulled out before. Okay. Yeah, that's crazy. And the blue orb too. I've seen one of those, except it was much smaller than the one that you saw. But yeah, amazing, amazing. Um, is any of this stuff? Did you learn anything about the aliens and so forth through your culture, or is this just totally foreign from what you might have grown up learning?
I grew up, and the way that the my people are on the reservations, we don't talk about things like this.
Okay.
So,
Mhm.
I mean, we'll talk about, ghost stories or something strange happening, but when it comes to like, grays, we see the UFOs, but like,
Mhm.
it's just chatted softly about between each other because with activity we certainly don't want a whole bunch of people, and one reservation no one's really allowed on it, so you can't go and investigate any
No.
thing. Um it, it I don't know. I'm guessing too a lot of people would just be like, why is she talking about this?
Uh-huh.
Because it's important to talk about these things.
Mhm.
It really is. And if I'm going to be labeled, crazy for the rest of my life, so be it. But I'm not going to deny that any of this didn't happen.
Right.
Mhm.
I
And
agree.
yep. And you said something interesting. You mentioned you must have watched one of the podcasts, and
Mhm.
I something stuck with you was that I was saying I was like, uh, this was around 2006. So after I'd moved into the house that we were living in, I started to have like these where I would feel like, okay, I'm like my head would I would hear this metallic buzz,
Mhm.
and I couldn't move once I heard this buzzing, and I would sometimes fight it, and I can fight it now,
Mhm.
but when it was first happening, I couldn't stop it. And it was like my whole body was like vibrating at this level, and then I could feel myself being lifted up. And I only after doing some research, I came across a couple of experiencers that were saying that these beings had spoke with them and was saying that to get you through basically all of this physical, like your house, you need to vibrate at a very specific level. And I was
Mhm.
like, well, that makes total sense,
Mhm.
because
Yep.
they were also vibrating at the same level,
The
picking
same
me up,
frequency. Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So that was a lot of research just to find that out. Sorry, I don't have any
Oh,
more for you.
no, that's okay. I mean, for me, it's interesting because I know what you mean about the vibration. You can tell, at least I can tell when they're going to be coming or if they're nearby because I can feel that vibration.
Yes. You
Their
hear it.
vibration is
It's a
different.
weird buzz. Like it
Mm.
starts in your head.
For me, it's like I start to get anxious and my hands get sweaty. I start getting really nervous and jittery. Yeah. And then, if I lay down or, whatever, because sometimes you just want to lay down for some reason, even though you're terrified, something's going to happen. You still want to go lay down in bed or whatever the case may be. And then things happen. So, um, yeah, just there's some similar things. And I find it astonishing where you said you had like this black mist around you.
Hmm.
So you were laying in bed and you saw the mist all around you.
No, I was walking around the house. Well, I wasn't really walking. I was like floating or gliding,
Okay.
where it wasn't like taking like these kinds of steps. And I was just I was like I was part of the mist.
Okay.
But it was like I could see it around, but I mean I wasn't looking down. I didn't really, you don't look for your arms because you assume your arms are attached to you.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just don't I don't know. I didn't look down, and it was like I came around the corner, and I just immediately saw my form curled up on
Mhm.
a love seat, not a very big couch. And as soon as I saw, it was just like something. I couldn't stop it. I just flew across the room and just bang, I was right back into my body.
Yeah. 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 Something similar to that as well. I've had happen.
Mhm.
But it's phenomenal. And then you're mentioning that you got pulled up to the ceiling and popcorn on the ceiling. So
Mhm.
your physical body, it sounds like, at one time they pulled you out of your body and you were able to, navigate through
Yes.
the house, and then physically touching the popcorn another time, that's on the ceiling before they pull you through.
Yeah.
Do you have any missing time with these incidences?
Oh, yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
I would
I
think so.
don't have a log of it, but I mean, I do like take pictures and stuff with my phone. And for a while I was wearing like this watch that would, I was obsessed with light sleep and deep sleep for some reason, and the watch would keep track of that. And I know it was like I went to sleep and it was like 4 o'clock.
Now? Oh,
I
there we
know.
go.
Well, I went in the house at 4 o'clock. I went to sleep at 5. I distinctly remember because it was like 5:05, and I was like, okay. I laid down and I woke up and it was like 10 o'clock. So that's like, 5 hours of sleep, right?
Yeah.
No, I look at my watch and it tells me that I was sleeping for 7 hours. Like
Hmm.
I sat there and I rationally thought maybe the watch is broken. But it's
Mhm.
worked every single time before and after that. But it
Yeah.
still just sits in my head that I 2 hours of extra sleep time when it was just not physically, possible in that
Right.
time frame.
Yeah. I know that there's a lot of people that'll wear smartwatches, especially people that are, abductees and stuff like that, because they try to track, where they've gone or these sorts of things. And those, I guess, they malfunction quite often
Yeah.
during during their abduction experiences.
Mhm. Like
So,
I oh, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, so you've been pulled out of the house or have actually physically been walking on the ground outside.
Yes. I remember just I was kind of fuzzy. I woke up and I pulled the blankets back and immediately like I was looking down, I was like, there's stuff in bed. And then I looked and I'm like, no, it's not in bed. It's like falling off of my feet.
Hmm.
And I don't want I mean, I lived in an area where there was a lot of pine trees and a lot of sap, so you don't wanna walk around barefoot like that
Right.
because you'll be picking pine needles and the sap, rubbing it on your feet, or it's like, I always wore, like, shoes or something, and I was like, "I why would I leave? Why would I go outside
Yeah.
and walk around?" And then,
Mhm.
I mean, this was the age before, your phone had any type of location or before you even had watches. So this was like 2006 that this was all
Mhm.
happening.
Yeah. Wow.
Mhm.
Wow. So, uh, you know, I've been pulled out and I've, been in the yard and I've seen things in the sky. But a lot of my experiences, I'm not able to recollect. I had to go through EMDR to pull a lot of things that were kind of hidden, in my subconscious. Through therapy and stuff with EMDR to pull a lot of that stuff out. But it was one experience in particular that made me kind of realize that there was something going on. And from that one experience, all this other stuff opened up for me. So I'm wondering, did you kind of know your whole life, or was there a specific moment in time when you realized that this stuff was real and this stuff was happening to you? Or is this just something that from the age of 3 you've kind of known about?
I think I was like a really strange kid. I remember about age 3 and like looking at my mom and going, "This isn't my mom." I'm
Oh,
like, "This is not my mother. I
oh
don't
my.
look anything like her.
Hmm.
I look exactly like my father from fingertips to toes. It's got the same ears, got the same nose, eyes, lips, neck, everything. We look exactly alike, but I don't look like the woman that gave birth to me. And I actually got some of her hair, so I'm going to have, because back then they didn't have the mother do
Right.
maternity, testing
Right.
or
Right.
anything,
Right.
maternity testing. They just had the father. And
Mhm.
so my father went in and he's like, well, it's 99.9, 9% that she's mine. And it was just like, how could you even, I know this, and I'm like 4 or 5. I know that this is my father.
Yeah.
But I mean, also too, I knew at a really young age, probably about 4, I know I was still in preschool,
Mhm.
that I was going to see like the whole world that just it was going to stop being one way and start
Mhm.
being a different way. Like it was like the civilization that we're used to was going to be defunct and they were going to build a new one. And I don't like at 4, who thinks that? Most everybody is like worried about, dolls and toys and stuff. And I'm here because I feel like I'm here to see this.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of abductees that talk about the new Earth, and I've come in contact with that myself. That whole phenomena,
Mhm.
the new Earth phenomena, if that's what you're speaking of. We're talking about abduction tonight with Eve Howard. Amy, if you need to know some more, we can get into that. Um, and hi, Scott B. Welcome for joining. And Abbott Hoffman. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for coming in. Anyway, we're going to go more into your experiences because when was the last time that you've had an experience?
I would probably say last week.
What?
Last week, yeah. I was going to sleep and I started to hear that like buzzing again, and I'm like, oh, here they go. And they have, for some reason, I don't know if it's just me, but I think that they have a harder time when I'm on my side.
Mm,
So if I hear that metallic buzzing and I don't feel like going anywhere, I will turn on my side. And I don't know what it is, but it also causes a little bit more pain too for me. But it,
mm,
if I can keep myself, I've learned that if I, when I get to the sleep paralysis, if I can move just one little thing, like if I can move my pinky, I can break it.
mm,
So I mean, I'll sit there and or just like my mother said, I used to like have these nightmares when I was a kid. And I go, what kind of nightmares? And she's like, well, you had night terrors. You would like I
mhm,
would just be sleeping and then there would be screaming like somebody was killing you. And I would jump up and I would go run into the room. And she's like, and it was always the same thing. And I was like, what? And she's like, you don't remember? And I'm like, no, I don't remember. And she said, you would tell me that there was a man in your closet. And I was like,
mm.
this whole time, I cannot sleep with my closet open. So
Yeah,
that
there you go.
that I found out why now.
Yeah. Well,
But I
well,
was
that
like
makes
forgetting that.
Yeah, that makes sense, and it's so funny as we go through life too, and we're experiencing, the things as children, and then we carry those forward, and we don't find out till later why we're a certain way, and then we clue in something triggers our memory, and we're like, oh yeah, that's why that is that way it is, that's kind of cool, and it's very validating.
Yeah.
Um, and gratifying when you figure those things out for sure. But yeah, so you were talking about your mother. Did she have any of these experiences? Do you know?
Um the only thing that I can remember was she said she was like 14 and like um well my mother's parents like passed away when she was really young and she was about 14 and they were both gone and she
Hmm.
was living with family And they all decided to walk into town, because not very many people had cars on the reservation. And so they walk into town, and my mother decides to stay back. And like, my mom could not find her car in a parking lot.
Oh.
I was always the one to lead us out of the mall and to find the car, because she never could. She couldn't find her way out of a wet paper bag. But she ends up in the woods for hours, and she doesn't remember any of it. But then she remembers walking out. She remembers walking in. She doesn't remember anything. She remembers walking out the exact same place where she went in. And it's like, everybody's back at this point. And they're like, where were you? We were about to send like everybody out to look for you. And she was like, I went for a walk. And it was like, everybody knew her, and they were just like, and she doesn't remember.
Yeah.
But I think one of the most interesting missing time was, I think it was it the I was living in Phoenix in 96 and 97. And about, I'd say 10 years ago, my mom has the TV on. She likes to like watch Aliens and stuff like that. And they have on there, and they're talking about March 13th and 97, and they're like showing the Phoenix lights. And I'm like, we lived there at that time. And she looks at me like I just grew a second head. And she was like, you don't remember that? And I was like, why would I sit here and say I don't remember it if I don't remember it? I mean, we're just like two old ladies fighting. And she's like, how could you not? She was like, everybody was talking about it. You couldn't go to the bank. You couldn't go to the grocery store. You couldn't, go anywhere without everybody talking about it. It was on the news. The mayor was talking about it. And I'm like, no, I don't remember that. And then I sat there and thought about it. I'm like, the only time that would have happened was the one time I had missing time. Like it was probably about 2 days of missing time. And that would have been right on that date. So
Wow.
And the weird thing was like, I remember being at my apartment. I don't, and then the next thing you know, I wake up and I'm at this hotel. Why? I had an apartment. Why would I be at a hotel? Yeah. And it was like one of those dark paneled, orange furniture, and it was like, where am I? And I remember getting up, and like my car was out in the parking lot, and my keys were there. I don't recall buying this at all. I don't understand why I would. I don't know. But I have like 2 days of missing time, and it just coincides with the Phoenix lights.
Wow, that's an incredible story. I can't even imagine. Did you have family looking for you during that time, or?
No, that was the thing. But this was before cell phones. This was, I think I hit a pager. So ancient.
Yeah. I remember. I had one myself. I think we probably all did. But big old garage door opener looking thing, that you'd carry around. And then you'd lose it, and you'd be freaking out just like you. Well, yes. Now I think it's worse with the cell phone. If we lose our cell phone, our whole lives on the cell phone now. So.
It is. It's horrible.
Oh my gosh. So you said also your sister, kind of had seen some things, and I'm wondering if it's followed her as well. What I'm trying to see is how far back this goes, and how extensive it is with your family.
Right.
If you've heard any stories from your grandparents, as well as siblings.
I know my father was in the Vietnam War, and he never talked about it. In fact, I didn't even know he served until I got his DD-214s after he'd passed away. I'm like, why didn't he ever say this? And it was just like, my oldest kid would be like, would you want to say something if you were there? And I'm like, no, you're right. I mean, but I remember it was like, after my parents divorced, I was like 10 years old. And I decided to finish out like half the year with my dad and then half the year with my mother. So I would go to 2 different schools. And I think my father used to have to wake me up at like 6:15 at like the latest to get me up, to get me going. I'm a slow person in the morning.
I
And,
understand.
I'd have to eat and get dressed, and so hard. And then I had to be out by the bus by 7:25. And so anyway, my dad wakes me up and he's like, here. And he's like, I'll drive you to school. And I look out and I'm just like, the sun is like coming up. I'm like, why did I wake up so late? And he didn't say nothing to me. And I eat my food and he's driving me to school and we're halfway to school. And he goes, so the reason why I was late in waking you up was that there was a UFO outside your window. I'm like, what? Seriously? Why didn't you wake me up? I am so bummed. I am bummed at this point. I'm like, why? My dad was probably just like staring there for like a half an hour at this thing. And he didn't even bother to like nudge me and be like, hey, look at this. Check this out.
Right.
So I guess, you think about it, the only person that was there at both times of seeing that being was me. And now I have, UFOs outside my bedroom window. And I think I can't remember how, like, it had to have been like 12. So maybe 6th grade.
Yeah.
So, and now we got all this tied in, and then I'm going to share something that happened very recently. I would say recently anyway. And we're talking, it was like after the full moon in June. So it was June 14th of 2022. And I think it was the night of the full moon. So it might have been a Saturday, I think Friday or Saturday, something like that. And I'm sitting there and I was visiting a friend of mine. Like, he is Madej, so he's a medicine man. And he was living down in Arizona. We're from the same reservation and we've been friends since we were teenagers. And he's like, come on down, come hang out. I don't know anybody here. It'd be nice to see family. So I went and hung out with them. And the one night I was just like, I filled this water, this jug with water. And I'm just like, okay, I'm envisioning like this water is like filled with golden light, with love. And he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, shh, I'm trying to make this water glow. And he's just like, okay, you do you. And I was like, afterwards, after I could see it with my eyes closed, that it was glowing very bright. I said, let's go outside. And I go, but leave your phone here. And he's like, leave my phone. Okay. And he's like wondering, what is she doing? And I'm like, I left my phone there too. And we walked outside and I knew what we were going to see, but I wanted to see if he'd notice it. And I brought the water out and I asked him, did you bring some tobacco? And he goes, yeah, I brought some tobacco. And he walks outside and he gets past like the porch overhang. And he goes, do you see that? Do you see that? And he's freaking out. And I knew what he was looking at. Like, as soon as we walked out, like all these ships just started to turn their lights on. In the sky, I had never seen that many ships in my life. But I was specifically told to do this water blessing for the earth. And so like I did it with water. I didn't know what else to do. And it was like I was just kind of going with whatever kind of popped in my mind. But they had requested that we not bring our phones out there. And yeah, they were out there. They watched us. I poured the water. Well, we did a prayer and then I poured the water into the earth. And then we each took a handful of tobacco and we stood back to back. And he's facing the moon and I'm facing away from the moon. And we're saying our prayers and I go to put the tobacco down. And as I'm like leaning down, I thought maybe there was a car like doing a U-turn or something in front of the house because it just got brighter. And I was like, oh, and he goes, did you see that? And I'm like, I see, they're starting to leave at this point, because they figured it's over or whatever. Like they were just shutting their lights off, just like how they just showed up. And he's like, the moon got brighter. And I was just like, that's not possible. And he's like, but it is, I'm telling you. And, he's the kind of person, if you said, yeah, he would get kind of upset, so I didn't want to upset him. I was like, yeah, I did notice that, but I thought it was a car. And I was like, how can someone turn the moon up,
Right, right.
And I think we were in Safford, Arizona, and we were like at the base of like the Lucifer telescope.
Okay.
Yeah, so it kind of gives you an idea where we were in Arizona. And I've been trying to get him. He works a lot. I was like, but I've been trying to get him on my show to come on and validate the story. I said, because, I don't have any pictures now, because I didn't take my phone out because they said don't. And I just wondered if we had brought our phones out, snuck it out, would they have been there? So, that's kind of.
They definitely would have known if you've had.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering now, you talk about your phone. Have you ever gotten any, footage at all? Photos, video?
No. I mean, I think it was like, it's really hard to do it at night.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like, I remember that one time my husband and we were following this light. And we got to a certain point where I'm like, pull over, and we were going to take video of it. and it wasn't just us. There was people pulled over and they were all had their phones up. And I don't know what happened, but he's like, oh no, my video he couldn't get his video work. He hit the button and he goes back up and the thing is gone. And everybody's getting in their cars. And I'm like, yeah, that's great.
Oh,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, it seems like I started seeing a lot of ships in 2012. I saw him on the 4th of July, and then I saw him exactly 1 year later on the 4th of July again.
Do you think there's maybe a ramp up in the amount of sightings that are happening lately? Does it seem like there's something coming to an apex here?
I did notice a lot of ships. Well, I was first seeing like the triangle ships, which, if you do a little bit of research into that, those are TR3Bs. There's a patent number for them, the government, whatever. And I was seeing, I think it was probably 2015, I saw a ship that I'm seriously, like, I doubt, my own eyes. But we were like, my husband and I were driving, or he was driving and I was in the passenger and I'm on my phone. And then you get to a certain point where you don't have service. And as soon as I got there, it was like I heard someone say, look up. So I looked up and I started looking, and I see this huge ship. And they call them like wedges of cheese because they look like the big, huge Star Wars. And I'm just like floored because I'm like, I'm trying to show him. And every time he looked, there was trees and he couldn't see it. And I was getting frustrated. And I was like, hurry. We have to get, to this break in the trees. And he goes, what is it doing? And I said, you're never going to believe me. And he's like, try me. And I'm like, it's like, there's like smoke rings coming out the back of this thing. So I don't know if it's like broken or what, and there were these, like, it was like puff, 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 and these smoke rings. And I'm just like, I'm officially losing it. And, I was like, we get to the cutoff and we look up and you can see like these weird smoke rings, but they're not as, they don't look as they did as they were coming out. They were kind of, older ones. Okay. And I look into the clouds and like it's late afternoon, early evening, because we were coming home from work and we didn't get home till about 5. And the clouds are like kind of, like it's purpley, regular white clouds, and the sun is going down. Right. And in the clouds is this huge circle of golden light. and it didn't look like it was normal. Like all these portals that you're seeing on like TikTok, Instagram, and I seen that like probably, I don't know, 2015, maybe 2014. So, yeah, and I was trying to tell people there was this portal in the clouds, and everybody's like, "Yeah, you're nuts," and now I'm seeing pictures of it, and I'm like, "This
Yeah.
is what I saw." And then
Right.
they're like, "Yeah, what'd you see with the wedge of cheese that was blowing out smoke rings?" And I'm like, I know how that sounds, but I mean, I don't know how else to say it. But this ship was huge, and there was no way this thing had landing gear at all. So I don't know why it was there. Like I was like rubbing my eyes. I was just like, I need you to see this so that
Yeah.
people don't think I'm crazy. And he's just like, you know,
You need somebody to validate it for you. Yeah. And the other people. Right. Yeah.
Mhm. And it
That-
was like, they were like, why don't you take a picture of the ship? Because the only thing I could think of was that it went through the clouds and into that portal. And that's why what am I going to take a picture of a cloud? Clouds, look at these smoke rings. And people those don't look like smoke rings. I mean,
Mhm.
and you're like, where did it go? And you're just so upset because you finally get a chance to take a picture and there's nothing there.
Yep.
So,
You know what I've noticed is I'll go out to places like Mount Baker here in Washington or Mount Adams, and I'll just start taking, random pictures. And not inevitably, but a lot of the time I'll end up catching stuff in those photos that I didn't expect to catch. And I think they have a sense of humor. In some way they do. It might be a dry sense of humor, but darn it, it is funny. They'll show up, like I take 3 pictures and they'll show up in the center picture, but nothing in the other two. And then, even though it was like a second later or even less than a second later, they won't show up but in the center one. And I get, photos of things moving in the sky, in the star field, doing loop-de-loops and different things like that. But it's never when I expect it to happen. You know what I mean? If I go out there with intention to find something, I may, but it's not like that.
Mm-hmm. That's true. It's never like that. It wasn't like that when I had my camera. I had my tripod and I went camping. I was like, told my best friend, I'm like, we are going to see Sabe. And he was like, Sabe. And I'm like, yeah, Sabe. I was like, that's the Ojibwe word for Bigfoot. And he was like, okay. I was like, I'm bringing you out because you're a guy. And, I was like, there's bears out here, and I don't know if I made him nervous, but I was like, I was used to being out in the woods and I love it.
Yeah.
But it was like, I need a break. I need to get out. I think we went camping a week after 4th of July this year. And we went, I didn't even pick a spot. I was just like, here. And there was so many campgrounds, we camped, not by a lake. It was really weird because like the lake was a little bit further back, but there was no campgrounds there. And I don't know, there was nobody camping because everybody must have been camped out from the 4th. So we're walking around there was only like 6 campsites at this place. And we're walking around and it was like the second day. And I start calling, Sabe. And he's looking at me and he's like, I'm just like, Sabe. I said it like 4 times. And I said, that's it. And I was like, we were hearing the weirdest stuff outside. We were hearing like, it sounded like somebody was tromping through the woods. But it wasn't a bear because a bear makes like snuffing sounds, like
right.
really weird noises, and then and then they're like biting stuff, and this was just like somebody was like moving with intent in the woods.
Yep.
And like huge branches were breaking, but we didn't get any rocks thrown at us, which we must have been very respectful of him. And he didn't, like wake up in the car, the micro car is flipped over or anything. It was like, but it was like this. When I got there, I was like, this is the place. And they're like, how do you know? And I was like, look. And there was like this little toy soldier that was like on the picnic table when I got there. And I was like, it's a sign. And I know everybody is so sick of me saying stuff like that. But I mean, it's like I intentionally didn't pick a place. I just went out and just found one. And it was like, this has been a week since anybody has been here camping since the 4th. Why is it sitting there on the table like that? There's raccoons, there's all these other stuff that would mess with it. I was like, it rained a couple of times with some really bad wind. It shouldn't be sitting there like that. I mean, I'm sure by now my friends all know how exactly crazy I am. So,
well, it's important to trust your intuition like that. They do leave signs, that's for sure.
They do. And the weird thing was, okay, I did not see him, but the weirdest thing, I was sitting there and we were busy looking at, because there was like a bunch of like UAPs and they were like spinning around, and it was like old, what was it? Asteroids back in the day, where they were just kind of spinning around and we're watching it. And I just like looked over in the woods and I'm like, I looked at him and I'm like, look back, and it was gone, but it was like this big red orb.
Oh.
And it was like, I'm not seeing that. I'm like, I could be just tired, and I don't drink. I've been sober for 8 years. So I don't drink or, do anything that would make me see weird stuff like this. I just see it.
Right.
Yeah. And it was bigger than the car. And then the weird thing was that there was like trees there, but it was like, I'd probably say it was about 7.5 feet.
Wow.
And it was like, people talk about, running after him, trying to catch a picture of him, and they have him, right around, and then it just disappears. And it's like, I've had so many people and some elders tell me, he's interdimensional. He just, they're like, I was like, how? And they're just like, they'll tap me on the forehead and they're just like, pineal gland, it's like, oh yeah, thank you. I mean, but that's how you learn, I mean, the elders tell you things and sometimes, it can be kind of embarrassing and everybody laughs at you, but you learn. You won't ask that question again.
Okay, so, Eve, we're going to have to cut it pretty soon here. And I'd like you to go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you once again. And,
all right. Yes, you can find the podcast on Rumble. It is Prime Declassified Podcast. My 13-year-old did our logo, and one of my favorite guests, I think he was the 4th guest, he actually made our podcast music for us. So it's exclusive, but you can find us there. You can find them on Facebook, Prime Declassified on Facebook, Rising Spirit, Eve Howard, we're on Facebook, and I think YouTube is Eve Howard. So.
Well, thank you very much for coming tonight. It's been a blast, and I've got plenty of stuff. I've got orb videos to show you and all kinds of stuff later on. I'll have to send to you anyway.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dave Scott's up next. Thank you very much, Eve. And we'll talk later. Guys, that was an amazing time. I tell you what, she was awesome. What great stories. Anyway, so we're going to go ahead and hit the outro, and Dave Scott will be up next.